Is intuition connected to this idea of listening to the body?
I think you can learn to listen to your body. There's skills, there are techniques for you to pay attention to your body. I mean, I think that we grow up in a culture that doesn't really allow us to do that. A lot of us have grown up either in family structures or cultural structures where your body is objectified, your body is something for you to get something or achieve something or a way to get to point A or point B. And there's not a lot of listening that.
When I think about growth, I do think about self-knowledge, self-awareness, inner peace. Do you also measure growth from those perspectives?
We all go through periods in our life where we feel like we have more inner peace, we're growing more. Like adolescence and like your first year of life, there's a whole sort of span of human development. I feel like there are times when you grow and you have pain and you learn things, and then there might be a period of time where you're not as much. Yoga Bones came a little bit out of that because I was working in a hospital. And, people would come in and they might come in for like having fallen down. They'd have a hip replacement or something, or they'd have a hip fracture and they'd be in rehab and I'd be working with them and they wouldn't be able to say, put on a sweater or a shirt because they couldn't use their arm. And I was like, so what happened with your shoulder? And they're like, well, I don't know. It just stopped working a couple of years ago. I'm like, well, what do you think happened? They're like, I don't know. I didn't ever get it checked out. It just stopped working and might even be bilateral shoulders. So I kept feeling like there's so many times where people, they don't know that their life has become smaller because they haven't been able to identify that there's something wrong. They haven't been able to identify that, or they're not in a situation where they can fix it. So they just sort of live with pain. And then living with pain means that there's a reduced life participation.
Right.
You're not going out to live your most full life at whatever age you're in, whatever part of your lifespan you're in. If you have pain and your functioning has become decreased and you're not able to function to the fullest of your capacity at that moment. And I was just seeing that again and again and again. And both occupational therapy and yoga, I think, really strive to have people learn about themselves, learn to self-regulate, learn to look inward, learn to sort of notice what their deficits are. And yoga, for instance, will increase balance and improve function and maybe decrease reactivity. So they both kind of are healing practices and work on increasing function.
And it's hard to imagine that some people actually choose to live in pain instead of learning the reasons why they're in pain. Would you say fear gets in the way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure fear, and also just I think sometimes people have this feeling that it's just they learn to live with it.
Right.
I mean, that's what I hear again and again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
And sometimes things are misdiagnosed. Sometimes things aren't caught for a long time. And it's just like, someone will have back pain for a long time, but it might be more serious. It might be stenosis or it might come from a herniated disc or something. And so sometimes people identify it, but they just think that they don't know how to fix it. Yeah. So it could be fear or it could just be a lack of tools. And that's also why I sort of felt like, well, let me do something where I can have people that actually have identifiable issues and give them something that they can work on. So they don't have to go on YouTube. They don't have to search the internet. They can, if they know that they have a herniated lumbar disc, I have something that will probably help them. If they have a frozen shoulder, I can give them something that will help increase mobility and strength.
Yes.
It's just in a yoga way. Yeah, I mean, I do think it's fear, but I think it's also just sort of sometimes not feeling that you have the power or the information to make change.
Thank you for doing that, Laura. That's a beautiful, compassionate work. Generous, too.
Because I work in occupational therapy professionally and I'm a yoga therapist.
Yeah.
And so I just felt like there was some hostility between two factions. Like I had a foot in both doors, really. And I was operating in both worlds and I was having similar conversations in both places. I was bringing yoga into my Western medicine practice, and I was firmly believing in a Western medicine, like biomedical, evidence-based approach with yoga as well. It doesn't have to be yoga, but for me, I've been doing it for 30 years because it's a practice that I keep exploring and learning, and it's like the gift that keeps on giving. The more you do it, the more you learn, and the more it gives you and enriches your life.
Wow.
That's how I, how I think of the yoga practice. Is really it's a whole sort of bouquet of depth.
And yes, it's very much sounds like it. The more I hear you, the more I'm like, oh my God, I have to. Not that I have to, but it inspired me to look for some. Practice yoga.
I got my boyfriend doing yoga.
Oh, that's great.
It took me a year, but now he does yoga once a week on Zoom. And, he loves his yoga teacher. He's very devoted, very consistent. And, you don't even have to, that's a practice. Even once a week is a practice.
Yeah.
If you did it every morning I have a student I write about in my book. He knew he wasn't the type of person, and I think this is good for people that are listening, and for a home practice. He knew he was not the type of person that would just sit down and do 20 minutes or half an hour of yoga a day. He just knew he wasn't. He's old. He just knew. So, he devised this little system where he was making coffee in the morning, and he would do Tadasana and stretch his arms over his head, and he would sort of do a kind of half dog at the countertop, and he might stretch his shoulders, and then later during the day he would do a few hip stretches on a chair, and then maybe at night he'd put his legs up the wall. He had his breakdown of 3 or 4 poses 3 times during the day. And for him, that worked, and that kept him in his body. That was his practice. It doesn't have to be this big, dramatic, intense yoga time. It will be whatever it is. I started a yoga program in my hospital, and I would have, 70 and 80-year-olds coming in that had fallen down and broken their hip or their shoulder, or their ribs or their back, and they would be doing yoga for the first time. They often were they were interested in, they were also really excited about it because their grandchildren were doing yoga.
Right.
That was another kind of form of bonding. So I'm hoping that different generations can help other generations and other genders be successful in their self-discovery and exploration of their own body. And I think that's important to learn how to do and to feel that you can be successful doing it. And I really hope that my book can bring that to some people. What you build in your life is your life.
Yeah.
I do think life is sort of like a beautiful story.
Yes,
that you have to create. You're not given a beautiful story. You're given your life, but you have to create the beautiful story. And your actions, your daily actions create that story. Your actions and your thoughts create that story.